You've jeopardized everything. The house, the accounts, the life we built. You need to go tonight." Those were the last words my daughter-in-law said to me before slamming the bedroom door. A small room next to the laundry machine where I used to fold towels, make chicken soup, and live like a shadow in my own son's house. Subscribe to the channel and comment where you're watching from, because this story is about to take you on an emotional journey you won't soon forget. My name is Evelyn Brooks, 67 years old, living in Toledo, Ohio. And on that January night, I walked out of Brian's house, my only son, with a cloth bag, holding a few changes of clothes, my blood pressure medication, and an old leather wallet that used to belong to my late husband. I didn't cry. I didn't beg to stay one more night. I didn't look back. And if you think I had done something terrible to deserve it, no. I didn't steal. I didn't hurt anyone. It all started with a phone call that lasted less than 8 minutes, just me talking to the bank about a loan that Melissa, my daughter-in-law, had asked me to help fill out. I'd been living with Brian and Melissa since 2018, right after my husband Walter passed away from a stroke. At first, they said I should stay for company and so the house wouldn't feel so empty. But year after year, I stayed in that laundry-adjacent room, no windows, no lock, and slowly became the unpaid housekeeper. I cooked meals on a small hot plate. I walked to the pharmacy by myself, and I always kept quiet. I helped Melissa with paperwork. She had a few freelance gigs in accounting, and later opened a small LLC to apply for federal relief funds during COVID. I used to be an office secretary 20 years ago, so Melissa asked me to look over documents, PPP loans, SBA loans, income forms. She said I just needed to type in a few lines or sign under the section for assistance because she was too busy with the kids. I thought it was just minor help, nothing illegal. I didn't forge anyone's name. I only filled out the forms and signed under the section labeled Assistance Declaration, the part for someone helping another person file. I didn't realize that some of the information I typed wasn't accurate because Melissa told me exactly what to write. 3 days before I got kicked out, someone from the Federal Bank of Ohio called. They asked basic questions: where I lived, whether I knew anyone in the household was operating a business that received a loan, and if I helped fill out any documents. I answered honestly. I said Melissa had a small business. I helped her transfer content from a draft into the online forms. I even joked, "Oh, I'm just the typist. She calls me her in-house assistant." The person on the line didn't laugh. They just said, "Thank you, ma'am. That's all we need." The next evening, Melissa printed out a stack of papers and threw them on the dinner table. She pointed straight at me and yelled, "You told them! You told the bank!" "Jesus, Evelyn, you confirmed everything," I stammered. I said what?" Melissa nearly screamed. "You admitted that you assisted on the loan documentation. That means you verified false income. That makes you part of this mess if we get audited." Brian sat next to her, quiet as stone. He didn't speak. He didn't look at me. I felt my face flush. I didn't even understand what verified false income meant. I just typed what Melissa told me. 2 days later, I was folding towels when Brian knocked on my door, the door that never had a lock. He said softly, "Mom, maybe it's best if you find a place to stay. Just for a bit. Until this clears up." I looked at him. How long is clears up? A week, a month? He avoided my eyes. That night I left. No one walked me out. Lily, my 11-year-old granddaughter, who I used to walk to school every morning, was already asleep. I left a handwritten note on her nightstand. "Grandma loves you. Don't forget your morning milk, Lily Bear." I took the night bus to Monroe Street, carrying exactly $240, mostly coins and small bills from the kitchen jar. I rented a ground floor room near the Speedway gas station. The room smelled like a mix of floor cleaner and old damp walls, but it was quiet. I lay down on the springy mattress, and for the first time in years, I could hear myself breathe. No footsteps above me, no yelling, no slammed doors. I didn't feel angry, I just felt hollow. Not because they kicked me out, but because I realized I had lived for years as if being kicked out was always a possibility. I had lived in that house for 5 years, but never once felt like I truly belonged. When I first moved into Brian's house after Walter passed, I thought this was just a pause, a few months to heal from the loss. A home with my granddaughter, a kitchen with chatter, a backyard with warm afternoon sun. But then winter passed. Then spring, then summer, and I was still there. Eventually, I came to understand I wasn't a guest, but I wasn't family either. The room they gave me had once been a storage closet next to the laundry machine. No windows, no wardrobe. They moved out a few old boxes, placed a folding bed in the corner, and called it Mom's room. I didn't complain. I didn't ask for more. I bought a little lamp from Goodwill, set it on the side of the bed, and hung a photo of Walter on the edge of the worn bookshelf. I treated it like home, even though I knew I didn't own it. Every morning, I woke up at 6 a.m., like breathing. No alarm. No one asked me to. I made coffee, folded the towels Melissa forgot in the dryer. I swept the kitchen, wiped the counters, fed the dog, though it never came to greet me. Lily, my granddaughter, walked past me in the kitchen without lifting her eyes from the iPad. But she still wore the sweaters I knitted, still let me braid her hair each morning before school. To her, I wasn't a magical grandmother. I was just grandma. Part of the kitchen tiles, part of the smell of toast, part of the lunchbox that was always packed in her bag. Melissa usually showed up after 9 a.m., her hair wrapped in a towel phone glued to her ear. She hated noise in the mornings. Once, she even said, flat out, "Can you not drag the chairs like that? The wood floors are thin." I apologized. After that, I pulled the chairs with both hands very gently, as if I could shatter the whole house with just a sound. Brian worked nights, or at least that's what he said. I never asked further. Some nights he came home at 2 or 3 in the morning, dark circles under his eyes, saying nothing. Sometimes he stayed home all week, in an old t-shirt, sitting silently in front of the TV. During those times, Melissa would always look tense. They argued with their eyes. Whenever I felt the chill start to build in the air, I quietly returned to my room. I never asked how much they earned, never asked why bills came late, or why they needed me to fill out so many forms. I thought staying quiet kept the peace. But something shifted last fall when Melissa started asking me to sign more papers. Printed packet sections, highlighted in yellow. She said, "Just sign here, Mom. It's just a household assistance form. Nothing binding. You don't have any income anyway." I obeyed. I didn't read carefully. I trusted too easily. As time passed, I began to feel more like a convenient solution than a person. Simone, Melissa's cousin, started showing up more often. She walked in without knocking, poured herself coffee like it was her house, and sat on the couch I used to sit on to knit. Simone had a soft laugh that cut like a knife. "Still hanging around, huh?" "Evelyn?" I gave a small smile, said nothing. Because I learned something when I was 12. The older a woman gets, the easier she is to dismiss if she doesn't fight back. Simone flipped through the mail on the table, glanced at an insurance form, and casually asked, "Did you mention anything about the family's income to anyone?" "Like recently," I said. "Yes, a lady from some bank called last week. Just a few questions." Simone smiled, spinning her coffee cup slowly. "Let's hope you didn't say anything misleading." You know how it is. Once the government misunderstands something, it gets messy. From that moment, I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't know what. I just saw the change in Simone's eyes, like someone who had planted a seed and was waiting for it to sprout. I didn't tell Brian. I didn't tell Melissa. I kept folding towels, cooking meals, tidying up, as if tomorrow everything would be okay. But that tomorrow never came. One night, I stepped out of my room and saw Lily sitting alone at the dining table. She was doing her math homework. I was going to turn back so I wouldn't disturb her, but she looked up and quietly asked, "Do you hate my mom?" I froze. "Why do you ask that? Because you don't say anything, but you don't look happy either." I walked over and placed my hand on her hair. "I don't hate anyone, but I am a little sad. Some places, you can live there for a long time and still never feel like it's home." Lily didn't say anything more, but I think that was the first time in months someone in that house looked at me like a person, not a fixture. That night I went to bed with a sharp feeling in my chest. Not pain, not anger, just the quiet ache of knowing something was slipping away and you didn't have the strength to hold it anymore. And I was right. 3 days later, I was kicked out. Not because I did something wrong, but because I had stayed too long while still being a stranger. I used to believe that if I lived quietly enough, carefully enough, avoided every conflict, then I'd never become a problem. But what I didn't realize was in a house where kindness is taken for granted, the quietest person becomes the easiest to blame. That morning was colder than usual. December in Toledo often brings a slow, creeping cold, not snowy, not windy, just seeping into your collar, your bones like it's whispering something bad is coming. I was sitting at the kitchen table folding the last napkin when the landline rang. Melissa wasn't home. Brian was still sleeping. Lily was at school. I picked up. "Hello, this is Evelyn Brooks." The woman's voice on the other end was very polite. She said she was a representative from First Bridge Loan Services reviewing an application under the Small Business Relief Program. I figured it had to do with the paperwork Melissa asked me to fill out months ago. She asked, "We need to confirm who completed the support section for the business B Essentials LLC. Your name appears as the assisting party. Is that correct?" I hesitated, then answered, "Yes. I just typed what my daughter-in-law told me. She runs the business." The woman thanked me gently. "Yes, we just needed to verify that. Nothing to worry about." The call ended in less than 8 minutes. I stood still for a long time after hanging up. The kitchen was quiet, just the ticking of the wall clock and the smell of cold coffee. There was a pinch in my chest, not from what was said, but from the feeling that I had just touched a door I never meant to open. That evening, Melissa came home late. She didn't speak to me, but I saw her eyes red and tired, her steps heavy like stone. She skipped dinner. She didn't speak to Brian. She didn't call Lily to do homework. She just walked upstairs and slammed her door shut. The next morning, I saw Brian standing at the coffee machine, gripping his mug so tightly his knuckles were pale. I poured water into the kettle, about to ask if he was okay when he spoke without looking at me. "Did anyone call yesterday?" I hesitated. "Yes. Someone from First Bridge. They asked a few questions about the loan application." Brian turned slowly, staring. "And what did you say?" I replied. "I just confirmed that I helped fill in the information. I didn't sign anything for anyone. I didn't know anything was wrong." He didn't say another word, just stared at me, like I had accidentally broken something I'd never understand the value of. From that day, everything shifted in the house. Melissa barely spoke. Brian avoided me. Lily looked confused. And Simone started showing up more often. One morning, I was washing dishes when Simone walked in holding a cup of coffee, wearing Melissa's robe, no effort to hide anymore. She flopped into a chair and sighed like a tired stand-up comedian after a bad gig. Well, Mama Evelyn, once the government starts calling, it's never simple, huh? I turned around and wiped my hands with a towel. I didn't do anything wrong. She raised an eyebrow. Sure. But sometimes people don't have to do anything wrong. All it takes is saying the right thing at the wrong time. I clenched my fists. I just answered honestly. I thought that was the right thing. Simone smiled faintly. Of course, honesty can be its own kind of weapon. For the first time, I felt afraid. Not because I thought I had broken the law, but because I was starting to see the truth. I was a pawn in a game I didn't even know I was in. I went through my notebook. Forms Melissa had asked me to fill. Faint lines that read, assistance only in the corners. Some income statements from her company I had typed up based on her handwritten notes. And I started asking myself, if those numbers were wrong, who would get called in for questioning? Who was listed as the one who provided support on those forms? I stared at my own handwriting on a faintly printed page. Neat, clear, undeniable. That night I sat on the back porch steps. It was cold, but I needed air. Lily came outside to find me. She brought me a blanket, then sat down beside me. She didn't say a word. After a long pause, I asked, "Do you think Grandma is someone you can trust?" Lily looked up, surprised. "Of course. You're always on time. You always find my matching socks. You remember everything I'm allergic to." I smiled gently and squeezed her hand. "And if someone said I did something wrong one day, would you believe it?" She thought for a moment, then shook her head. "No, but I think grown-ups can do bad things without meaning to, as long as they didn't do it on purpose." That night, I went back to my tiny room. I looked around the small space and felt something settle deep inside me. I was going to be pushed out of this house, not because I was guilty, but because I no longer fit the version of the story they needed. Sometimes the quietest person becomes the perfect shield, and once that shield cracks, they don't fix it. They throw it away. That dinner started like every other performance. Melissa made chicken casserole with cheddar cheese and canned green beans. I set the table. Lily placed the glasses. Brian opened a bottle of red wine, the one Melissa only touched when guests were over, even though tonight no one else was coming. I sensed something was wrong the moment Brian sat down without taking off his coat. Melissa was wearing earrings, the kind she only wore when she had something to announce. And Simone, she had been around since the afternoon, smirking phone in hand, like she was waiting for someone to yell action. I placed the casserole dish in the center of the table. "Careful, it's hot," I said softly, an old mother's habit. Melissa didn't respond. She poured wine into her glass, then into Brian's, then didn't pour any for me. I sat down without saying a word. Lily served herself. No one spoke. The only sounds were forks scraping plates. Simone sipped her wine. Brian stared at his plate. Then Melissa set down her knife and her voice rang out steady and smooth, like a speech she'd rehearsed. "Tonight we're going to talk. No avoiding, no tiptoeing." I looked up. "Talk about what?" She pulled open a drawer, took out a stack of printed papers, and dropped them onto the table like she was slamming down evidence. "These are statements from the PPP loan documents, and these are questions from the bank about the call you were part of." I looked at the papers, hadn't even read a word when Melissa continued. "You confirmed you helped me fill out the application. You said you just typed what I told you. But do you know you basically admitted to verifying the information I swallowed hard. I didn't. I thought I was just helping with admin stuff. I didn't. Simone cut in. Yes or no, Evelyn? Did you fill in the financial info under Melissa's business name and confirm that the income numbers were correct? I turned to Brian. Brian, please, say something. He didn't look at me. He just murmured barely above a whisper. They're investigating Mom. I felt the floor beneath me sink inch by inch. Investigating what I didn't lie. I just followed instructions. I didn't know if those numbers were right. Melissa let out a cold laugh. And that's the problem. You didn't know, but you signed. You verified. You made it official testimony. Lily slowly set her spoon down. She didn't understand everything yet, but I saw her eyes scan the table like she was searching for just one adult who still felt safe enough to trust. Simone leaned back in her chair, crossed her legs. I think it's best if you leave before this gets worse. My hands went cold. Words caught in my throat. All I could get out was, worse how I'm family. Melissa spoke slowly, not meeting my eyes. Family doesn't pose legal risks to each other. I stood up from the table. The room seemed to shrink. I felt frozen, not from the weather, but because I was no longer someone they needed to pretend for. I walked back to my room. No one followed. No one called out. No apology. Just Simone's voice floating down the hall. Best if you go tonight. Clean and quick. I closed my door. It felt paper thin. Then came the silence. And then laughter. Soft quiet from the living room. I packed my clothes. One piece at a time. Slowly. Neatly. Not because I had time, but because this was the last time I'd get to touch things I once thought belonged to me. I only brought 2 sets of pajamas, a turtleneck sweater, my blood pressure medication, my wedding photo with Walter, and a small folder of old documents I'd forgotten I even had a copy of my ID medical records, a notebook of income and expenses. I didn't bring the porridge pot, didn't bring the unfinished knitting, didn't bring the lunchbox Lily had once decorated with stickers. I stepped out of my room. Simone was sipping wine with her feet up on the table. Melissa was tapping on her phone. Brian stood in the doorway like a statue. No one asked where I was going. Lily stood at the top of the stairs. Where are you going, Grandma? I looked up. She was wearing an old hoodie, hugging her stuffed cat. I whispered, I'm going away for a little while. Be good, okay? Lily took one step down like she wanted to say something, but then she turned and ran back to her room. I walked out the door. It wasn't raining, but the wind was bitter cold. No one came to say goodbye. No one said sorry. But I didn't feel angry anymore, because I finally understood I wasn't being kicked out because I did something wrong. I was being kicked out because I was the easiest person to blame. You don't need evidence to accuse someone you've already decided to throw away. You just need an excuse. And I'd given them that excuse with my trust. I left the house just before 10 p.m. Winter streets in Toledo were empty and cold, as if the city itself had learned to go quiet before anyone said a word. I rolled my fabric suitcase along the sidewalk. Each clack of the wheels felt like a silent verdict. You've been replaced. You don't belong. Your part has been erased. No one called to check if I made it safely. No one asked where I was going. I stopped at a bus stop about 5 blocks from the house, waiting for the last ride into downtown. A young black man nodded at me. I returned the gesture with a faint smile, one that probably looked worse than I imagined. I reached the Monroe Street area around midnight. An old motel sat behind an even older bakery. The neon sign only half lit the name L.R. Set Motel. The man at the night desk stared at me. I said, I just need a single room, nothing fancy. He asked if I had ID. I handed over an old driver's license, the photo taken when I was 53. My hair was still brown in that picture, and my eyes still held a trace of someone who mattered. I paid in cash. The last $20 bill I had pulled from the envelope hidden in my sock. The room had a squeaky iron bed, a nightstand, and a crooked landscape painting. On the table, there was a handwritten note. Please don't unplug the mini fridge. It leaks when turned off. I took off my coat, sat on the edge of the bed. My hands trembled. Not from the cold, but because I didn't know what I was supposed to do tomorrow. And no one needed to know either. I lay down without turning off the light. I didn't sleep. I just listened. Listened to cars in the distance, water pipes from the next room, and my own heart beating slowly in a chest that had grown so tired. I used to think if I ever walked out of that house, I would fall apart. But that night I realized I didn't fall apart. I was simply starting over. The next morning, I woke up at 6 a.m., like I had every morning for the past 40 years. No alarm, no one waiting. But my body stayed loyal to old habits, like a faithful old dog, guarding a door long after the family moved away. I walked a bit to find a convenience store, bought a packet of instant oatmeal and a small bag of tea. Back at the motel, I boiled water in a flickering electric kettle. Steam blurred the bathroom mirror. I looked into it and saw a thin woman, dark circles under her eyes, but no longer forcing a smile. I wasn't sure if I felt sad or relieved. I spent the entire morning writing down every expense in a small notebook I'd brought. $42 for the room, $6.50 for breakfast, $1.25 for the tea, remaining $190.25. I asked myself, how long could I last with that? A week. 10 days, I picked up my phone. It showed 12 missed calls. Brian Melissa, one unknown number. No messages, no apologies. I turned it off, stuffed it in the drawer. I didn't want to be needed only when someone needed a shield for their own guilt. In the afternoon, I went to the public library, still free for people who had nothing but an ID card and time to spare. I sat at an old computer and searched for emergency resources for seniors kicked out of home. The results listed organizations I'd never heard of before. Elder Abuse Legal Aid Hopeline for Seniors Shelter Resource Network. I opened each link, read every line, and for the first time in years, I filled out a form for myself. Not to help someone else, not to sign on someone's behalf, not to serve, but to begin again with my own name. Evelyn Brooks. That night I came back to the motel. The smell of bleach still lingered. I boiled water, made another packet of oatmeal, poured some tea. No one called it leftovers. No one complained the chair was too noisy. No one said I did too much or too little. I turned on the TV, kept the volume low, just enough to soften the silence. Then I opened my notebook and wrote a single line. First day not being treated like furniture in someone else's house. Still feels strange, but lighter. I don't know where life will take me next, but I know for sure I'm no longer there. And even if this new place is just a cheap motel room, at least this time I chose it for myself. I never thought I'd hear from them again, at least not this soon. The old phone I'd kept turned off for days because I was tired, because I was drained, because I needed space to breathe. I turned it back on that night to check an email from the Community Legal Aid Office. As the phone lit up, 14 missed calls showed on the screen. 12 from Brian, 1 from Melissa, 1 from an unknown number. I didn't plan to call anyone back. I was pouring tea, folding the only clean set of clothes I had left. I was living the quiet life I'd chosen. Then the phone rang, again. Unknown number. I set my tea down. Let it ring 3 times. I didn't answer because I felt weak. I answered because something in my gut told me this wasn't small. Hello? On the other end, it was Melissa's voice, but it didn't sound like her. It was hoarse, cracked, no longer arrogant, no longer sharp like a blade. Evelyn. It's me. It's me. We need you. I stayed quiet. My hand gripped the phone, not because I was emotional, but because my back had gone stiff, reacting out of old reflex. What's going on? I asked, calm and even. Lily. She's gone. No note. No phone. She went somewhere, and she's just gone. I slowly sat down on the edge of the bed. One of the pillows shifted out of place. Why are you calling me? I asked, steady. Melissa's voice faltered. Because your name was the last thing she searched in her browser history. Because you're the only person she still writes about in her journal. It felt like someone was telling me about some other child, not my granddaughter. I walked away. No one asked if I lived or died. And now you're calling me because you need something. On the line, I could hear her breathing hard. Brian. He's calling the police, but they said it's not enough yet to file a missing person report. Lily's only 12 and it hasn't been 24 hours, but she's never left home before. Never done this. Mom. When I heard her say mom, it was like a pin jabbed into my skin. Melissa hadn't called me mom in years, not once in the past 5 years. Only her, that woman, Brian's mother. I didn't say anything for a few seconds. I thought of Lily, the dog print socks I bought her, the hair clip I crocheted for her 11th birthday, the doll she kept hidden, afraid Melissa would say she was too childish. I stood up. Send me her most recent photo. I'll go look for her. Melissa broke into sobs. No, thank you. No apology. Just the panicked breathing of someone realizing for the first time they weren't in control anymore. I hung up. I didn't cry. I opened the closet, grabbed my coat, my wallet, a copy of my ID, and I stepped outside. Toledo at night wasn't beautiful, but I wasn't looking for beauty. I was looking for clues. I went to Lily's elementary school. The light was still on in the guard office. I knocked. The security guard was an older man with a white beard, Hank. I'd seen him a few times when picking Lily up after school. He remembered me. Mrs. Brooks. Wow, it's been a while. Wait, aren't you still the one who picks Lily up on Mondays? I froze. No, I don't live with them anymore. But my granddaughter is missing. Hank's face dropped. Good Lord, let me check the cameras. We sat in front of a small monitor. Hank rewound the footage from that afternoon. I saw Lily leaving school at 3:27 p.m., alone. No adults, no friends. What stood out, she didn't head toward home. She went in the opposite direction, toward the city bus station. I asked Hank to print a screenshot. Then I called the city bus service. I told them I was the legal guardian. No one even asked for paperwork and needed to know which route stopped near where Lily was seen. A kind woman transferred me to the driver on Route 8. I described Lily. The driver confirmed, yes, he saw a young girl with a purple backpack, alone. She got on the bus at 3:43 p.m. I thought it was odd, but she had a monthly pass. I didn't question it. She got off near the Central Library. I went to the library right after. It was almost 9 p.m., nearly closing time. The librarian still on duty was a young woman with glasses. Yes, I saw her. She came in alone, sat in the children's section, and read books. She asked if someone named Evelyn Brooks had arrived. My chest tightened. She asked that I said. The librarian nodded. She left a note. Said if you came by, to read this first. I opened it. The handwriting was a little messy, but it was definitely Lily's. Grandma, I don't know where to go. I don't want to live in that house anymore. They say you were wrong, but I don't believe them. If you get this, please take me home. I sank onto the bench outside the library. They erased my role. But one small person in this entire world still called me home. I stepped into the Toledo Public Library just as the door was about to lock. Lily was sitting on the bench by the window, her head down, clutching her purple backpack with the worn-out straps. She looked up when she saw me. Her eyes were red, her nose runny. But when our eyes met, I no longer saw a runaway child. I saw a little girl who had endured too much silence in a house full of adult voices. I walked over without saying a word, opened my arms. She stood up and buried herself in my embrace, like she had been waiting for that hug for a very long time. You really came? Lily whispered, her voice trembling. Of course I did, I said. I didn't ask why she ran away. I knew. I didn't need an explanation. No one runs away from home if they feel like it's really home. I took Lily back to my rented room. It wasn't spacious. It wasn't nice. There were no toys. But she sat on the bed, took off her shoes, looked up at me, and said, It's quiet here. No one yells at me. I poured her a glass of warm milk. Split my last pack of oatmeal in two. Lily ate slowly. She didn't ask, Am I doing something wrong? She didn't apologize for being there. That night she slept on the bed. I laid on the floor back against the wall with chipped paint. I didn't sleep. I just stared at the ceiling, listening to the steady breathing of a child who had finally found a bit of peace. The next morning, I knew what was coming, and I was ready. At 9:12 a.m., the phone rang. Brian, I answered. Mom, do you have Lily? I didn't respond right away. I wanted him to finish. We can't reach her. Her phone's off. She didn't come home. The police said they'll start a search if she's still missing after 48 hours. We thought maybe she came to you. I replied word by word, Lily is here. Safe. Not hungry. Not scared. Silence on the other end for a few seconds. We need to see her. Talk. Clear things up. My voice was firm, not loud, but clear. No one's coming here. No one sees Lily unless she wants to. This is not where you come to handle problems. This is a safe space for a hurt child. Brian choked up. You can't keep her. We're her parents. I answered. You were my children once too. But being family doesn't excuse neglect, manipulation, or emotional abuse. 3 hours later, Melissa called, her voice sharp, nearly shrieking. You have no right. You caused this. If you don't bring Lily back, I'll call the police for kidnapping a minor. I let out a small, cold laugh. You know very well I didn't kidnap anyone. She left that house because it no longer felt like home. And I have her handwritten note. I have library security footage. I have witnesses. If you want to take this legal, I'll walk it to the end. Melissa was breathing fast. You're tearing this family apart, I replied gently. The family you speak of cracked the moment you hung me on the wall like a broken clock. I didn't destroy anything. I just stepped away from the role I was assigned. The next day, I went to the Legal Aid of Northwest Ohio. Met with a lawyer named Ms. Harlow, a middle-aged woman with glasses, sharp eyes, and a calm demeanor. I told her everything, every detail, from the papers I signed to being pushed out of the house to Lily running away to the note she left at the library. I said I'm not asking for permanent custody. I just want temporary care so she can heal, so she can feel safe. I'm not perfect, but I'm the only one she came to when the whole world turned its back on her. Ms. Harlow didn't offer sympathy. She just nodded and said, "We can file for temporary guardianship, and I believe you have a strong case." I walked out holding a copy of the paperwork. My back stood a little straighter. That evening, Lily sat drawing by the folding table near the window. She used a broken pencil and a stack of used paper I'd gotten from the library. She handed me her drawing. Two people, one old, one small, sitting on a bed with sunlight coming in. I asked, "Is this us, sweetie?" Lily nodded. I wrote something in the corner, too. I looked down. Her handwriting, a bit messy, said, "Home is not a house. It's someone who lets you breathe." I'm not a strong woman. I'm not a fairy godmother. I wasn't born to be a martyr. But today, for the first time in a long while, I understood something clearly. I'm not anyone's bulletproof vest. I'm done protecting those who pushed me toward the gunfire. I'm standing before a child, the only one who's ever looked at me with eyes that saw the truth. And this time, I'm protecting the right person. The first knock came right at 9 a.m., 3 knocks. Firm, sharp, no hesitation. Exactly how Melissa always knocked when she wanted someone out of a room so she could walk in. I already knew they'd come. Not because they missed us, not because they cared, but because they needed control. Lily was having breakfast, half a slice of toast and a boiled egg. I placed my hand on her shoulder. "It's okay. I'll handle it." She nodded. Didn't ask who was at the door. She understood. I stood up and walked to the door. Not in a rush. I straightened my cardigan, took a deep breath. And I remembered what Ms. Harlow told me yesterday. If they show up, you don't have to let them in. You're not obligated. They might raise their voices, but the choice is yours. The knock came again. I looked through the peephole. Melissa was standing there, beige trench coat hair in a tight bun, heavy makeup, like she was heading to court. Brian stood behind her, head down, as always. Always the one who followed the louder voice. I opened the door. "Just a crack." "I'm listening." Melissa spoke quickly, her eyes barely landing on me for 3 seconds, scanning the room behind me, looking for Lily. "We're not here to fight. We just want to talk. To her. To you." I answered calmly, like someone brushing off a door-to-door salesperson. "No one here wants to talk, and this isn't a place you get to control anymore." Brian tried to step in, "Mom. I know things are tense, but she's our daughter." I looked straight into his eyes, the eyes that once looked at me with love, now darting away like a child who knows they're wrong but doesn't know how to say sorry. She's also my granddaughter. And she left. On her own. No pressure. I have proof. I have witnesses. And I have her handwritten note. Melissa's voice tightened, her words clipped. "We can call the police." I nodded. "You should. And I'll show them the school camera footage, Lily's journal, the library video, and a copy of the temporary guardianship petition already in court." A fragile pause hung between us. I wasn't trying to intimidate. But I've learned this. When someone uses power to harm, silence isn't nobility, it's complicity. Melissa sighed and took a step back. "She's a minor. She doesn't understand. She's being manipulated." I smiled, gently, clearly. If kindness is manipulation, I'll take the label. But if your coldness is the standard, then she ran from that standard all on her own. Brian spoke again, softer this time. "We just want to bring her home, to make things go back to normal." I tightened my grip on the door handle. Back to normal. You mean where Lily lives in a house where no one listens to her, where a 12-year-old girl knows that if she stands up for her grandmother, she'll be called a troublemaker? Melissa opened her mouth to argue, but I cut in. Do you even know what Lily wrote? Home is not a house. It's someone who lets you breathe. Have you ever let her breathe? 1 second. 2. 3. No one answered. Melissa pressed her lips tight. Brian lowered his head. I opened the door a little more. Not to let them in, but so I could step halfway out. I'm no longer the quiet woman behind the stove. I'm not the one who signs whatever sticky note you leave. I'm not the one who suffers in silence so you can save face. I am Lily's grandmother. And for the first time, I'm going to act like it. Not for power, but because she deserves to live with dignity. Melissa clenched her teeth. We'll sue. I nodded. And I'll show up in court. With the paperwork. With a lawyer. With the truth. And with a child you no longer deserve to call yours. I shut the door. Not a slam, no need. Resolve doesn't need volume. It lives in the moment you stop bowing. Lily stepped out from the back. Are you okay, Grandma? I sat down and pulled her into my arms. I'm fine. I really am, she whispered. Will they come back? I squeezed her shoulder. Maybe. But if they do, I'll still be the one at the door. And I won't let anyone take this place from you, even if it's just a small rented room. Because it's the first place you ever felt safe to breathe. They once thought I was a bulletproof vest, to wear when they needed protection and toss aside when they didn't. But I'm not a vest. I am Evelyn Brooks. And now I stand between what I choose to protect and those who once thought I didn't deserve a voice. October in Ohio came in cold and quiet. Early mornings, a thin layer of mist clung to the window of the small room Lily and I now share. No more sudden knocks on the door. No more threatening emails from Melissa. Everything's being handled by lawyers now, in court, where the truth can stand on its own without needing anyone's permission to be heard. I sat by the window holding a ceramic mug with a chipped handle that Lily had found in a Goodwill discount bin. Across the crackled glaze, the faded words read, "You matter." I smiled. Maybe for the first time in years I believed that was true. Lily now lives with me full-time under a temporary court order. Brian and Melissa didn't show up at the first hearing. Their lawyer requested a delay. But I don't care anymore. I'm not standing in the doorway anymore. I live inside now. And this time I own that little room. We're not rich. We still eat more bread than meat. We still borrow used books from the library. But Lily's mornings now begin with Grandma. What should I draw today? And our nights end with, will you tell me about a dream you used to have? I tell her that when I was young, I dreamed of opening a tiny bakery near the Cincinnati riverfront. I even imagined calling it Brooks and Butter. But everything got put off for a wedding, for children, for responsibilities, for all those just wait a little moments that lasted a lifetime. Lily looked at me genuinely surprised. You never told me that. I laughed. Because no one ever asked. We've started rebuilding that small dream together. Every weekend, Lily and I bake strawberry muffins using our little electric stove. We share them with the neighbors downstairs. One time, the librarian stopped by and was surprised by how crispy the crust on our bread was. She asked, "Do you sell these?" I shook my head. Not yet, but I'm thinking about it. 10 weeks after Lily first came to stay, I received a letter, a small piece of paper. Not from a lawyer, not from the court, but from Brian. Mom, I know I messed up. I don't know if there's still a chance, but if one day you feel like talking, I'd like to listen. Just knowing you're okay would ease my mind. Brian. I folded the letter. I didn't cry. I wasn't angry. I didn't rush to forgive. I just understood. Sometimes the first step toward change is when someone stays quiet long enough so someone else can finally speak. I used to think I was forgotten. Sitting alone in the kitchen, no one ever entered. When I spoke and no one looked up. When I signed papers, no one let me read. I thought I'd lost everything. But the truth is, I'd just never been allowed to be anything real. Not just a mother. Not just a grandmother. Not a cooking and babysitting machine. I am Evelyn Brooks, the woman who once dreamed of opening a bakery, who loved the smell of pine in October, and who had a dream no one ever thought to ask about. One night, Lily asked me, "Grandma, who do you think I'll be when I grow up?" I looked at her. That gaze no longer belonged to a child running away, but to something new growing back after a storm. I answered, "I don't know, sweetheart. But I believe you won't let anyone else write your story for you because you've already learned how to walk out of the silence that once held you back." That night I wrote a note and left it by Lily's bed. My handwriting's no longer neat, but she'd still be able to read it. You are not a burden. You are not wrong for needing peace. You are not what they said you were when they were angry. You are loved. You are home. Evelyn. Life doesn't start over at 67. It only just begins. I am Evelyn Brooks. I am not perfect. I don't have a mansion. I don't have a six-figure savings account, but I have a room where people can breathe. I have an oven where dreams are no longer put on hold. And I have a child who once ran away, now back again, calling me home.